Yeah, I don't want to get sued, so I got to be careful about what I say here. But
UFC BJJ recently broke onto the scene and finished airing its first ever season. It was something new that grappling fans had never seen before. Some may say that it pioneered a new path for jiu-jitsu. Like no one else. Hang on a minute, can you shut the fuck up? I've seen this somewhere before. Alright, I'm back. So as the title suggests, today we'll be discussing UFC BJJ and the similarities it has when it comes to the Craig Jones Invitational. You know, what parts the UFC supposedly stole, what the differences are, and the impact it has on the sport and athletes moving forward. If that sounds like something you'd enjoy, don't forget to spank the like button and my anus, and let's begin. You didn't spank it yet. Okay, so for anyone who isn't aware, what is UFC BJJ? UFC BJJ is a submission grappling promotion created and owned by TKO Group Holdings. These are the same people who run the UFC. The promotion officially launched in 2025, and with it they transformed the UFC's jiu-jitsu events into a fight league of sorts. In this promotion, they run higher level BJJ athletes against each other, and in the end, only the best can take the UFC belt. Now you might be saying, okay, cool. The UFC has a new event. I've seen them do events in the past. How did they, quote unquote, steal this? Okay, good question, made up person I use to pivot topics. You see, I have some inside sources on how all of this actually went down. So take a walk with me. I'll show you how it all happened. This man right here is Craig Jones, an Aussie BJJ legend who everyone knows and loves. You know, everyone except for cucks. Craig in the year of 2024 put on the best jiu-jitsu event the world has ever seen. An event where millions of dollars were up for harvesting. This event was called the CJI and it went like this. Craig took the best current fighters in the world and had them battle it out in a pit. In this pit, whichever fighters could advance to the top of their weight bracket would go on to win a $1 million cash prize. And the proceeds for the event? Well, they all went to charity. The event was a huge success. It was viewed and enjoyed by millions online, including myself, and it spanned over 2 very long days. Fighters Nicky Big Rod Rodriguez and Afro Samurai Keiru Tolo beat everyone in their divisions to become the rightful winners of the event. Overall, the 2 days were a huge, exciting success. The event was free to watch and it blew up online. But deep in the shadows lurked an evil organization. And this group of individuals wanted some of the sweet, delicious success for themselves. And that organization was called One Championship. Okay, no, I'm joking. They're dying. It was the UFC. So whoa, this is a pretty big accusation, right? People are out here saying this billion-dollar company is stealing ideas from Craig Jones. Also, a quick side note, this is for comedic purposes only. This video is a joke. I am a joke. I have a small wiener. Please don't sue me. And with that out of the way, let's discuss how UFC BJJ is completely different from CJI. Completely. You see, UFC BJJ has this completely original, never seen before pit. It's a pit that stops competitors from falling out of bounds. Some people say that this was stolen from CJI, which had worked with Karate Combat in forming a patent for this product. Well, those people are wrong. You see, this pit right here is rounded. It doesn't have edges. And this obviously makes it completely different.
It's rounded.
Okay, I'm joking again. This was 100% copied. This is like when you used to go to the supermarket with your mum and you would see those budget brand cereals. Crispix? No. These are crispy hexagons. Completely different. Now, the next thing to bring up is scoring. The UFC took CJI's scoring system and almost word for word explained Craig's ideology for using it.
to the mass audience, they understand a 10-point must, understand a decision in that sense, they understand it being scored round by round. So we're trying to appeal to a broader audience here
must system to the hardcore combat sports fan that already understand what happens in this type of environment. They are familiar with the 10-point must system in MMA, in boxing.
Now, the counter argument for this is that the UFC has always used this system for MMA, so really it shouldn't be an issue. This is a pretty fair argument, but to start using it after seeing its success in play makes it feel kinda suspicious, and it makes people feel like you copied CJI's homework. I see both sides of this argument. Now, the last thing to discuss of this copying aspect of the video is the athletes. The UFC seemed to poach or at least influence some of the original CJI athletes to come over into UFC BJJ. Now, this isn't really stealing, as an individual athlete has the right to work and compete wherever they want, but when you take the ring, the same athletes, and the same scoring system, it's pretty hard to deny that at a minimum, they were at least inspired by CJI. So I think it's pretty fair that Craig was dirty about all this. No one likes it when their work is taken and repackaged. But I guess that's just business. Now, just before I spoke about the athletes, so it's a perfect time to talk about the impact on not only them, but also the sport of BJJ as a whole. So firstly, let's talk about contracts. The UFC is notorious for having some pretty tight and low-paying contracts. Lesser named athletes for these events reportedly earned around $15,000, whereas bigger named athletes like Mikey Musumeci was paid around $300,000. Now, for a normal athlete, this isn't much at all, especially if we were talking about the best of the best. But BJJ, as most of you know, is a sport where it's really hard to earn money. Most athletes heavily rely on sponsorship and their instructionals just to be able to train full time. So for a lot of these guys, this money is something that could just never be turned down. But you see, the problem isn't just the money that they would earn from these UFC events. The problem is in the contract that excludes them from competing anywhere else. For example, as you know, CJI 2 is coming up. So what better way to limit the success of another event than to poach and forbid athletes from competing in promotions that aren't yours? Yes, UFC BJJ might come around more often, and it may bring a larger audience to see you compete. But I'm sure there's plenty of athletes out there who have signed a contract that at first might seem great, but in the long run, they may come to regret.
And I said, well, what does your contract say? And he's like, I didn't read the contract. I just signed it. Jesus fuck.
And this brings me to the last question of this video. Is UFC BJJ good for the sport? Ultimately, yes, but at the same time, no. Look, it's great for the sport to get fresh eyes from all the fans who love the UFC. The bigger the sport, the more people get paid. The better the competition gets, and the more fun we have as fans. But the problem I have with the UFC is that it is a monopoly. These guys have so much power when it comes to MMA, and if they do the same to BJJ, it's going to be really hard for the athletes. Because time after time as a business, we see the UFC dominate and leave competing promotions destroyed. Yes, they bring eyes to the sport, but without competition from events such as CJI, athletes will have nowhere to go and therefore have zero negotiation power. Imagine being stuck at your company and they're like, well, if you don't like it, you can leave. You can just go on elsewhere. Oh wait, there is nowhere else to go. We own everything. Oh, fuck. I started him up again. So guys, let me know what you think of UFC BJJ. I myself am really looking forward to CJI 2 and the crazy format that they have. Again, guys, if you're new here, don't forget to spank the shit out of like and subscribe button and my anus. I appreciate all of the support so far, and I'll be seeing you all next week for a new upload. Peace out.